Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and a very special welcome back for the second time. And I'll explain actually what happened in a second. The co-founder and director at Alchemy Labs Australia, and well, I think you mentioned last time, Dom, that this is the first book you've actually published yourself, as in written yourself, but you've been involved in a number of books before this one, and we're going to talk about this book today, which is called To Be Honest. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome back for another official recording of this podcast, Mr. Dominic Thurbon. Welcome, my friend.
I'm back. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me back. And I'm so glad that the story about why I'm back twice is in no way related to my own technological incompetence. That's great.
Well, and for people listening to this, they might be confused, particularly the people that listen to this podcast on a regular basis, thinking, hang on a second, I must have missed an episode. What's going on? No, you haven't missed an episode. We actually recorded one about a month ago, just after the Australian Grand Prix. So as we're recording this, it's early April. And Dom, you came to the screen with a magnificent orange, which was based on an orange mohawk, based on the work you were doing with McLaren.
Yes,
Cool.
Indeed. Sorry about that.
And now you've gone back to your pink, but you were telling me that next week you're doing a conference with an organization where their branding is yellow. So it's now going to be turning into a yellow mohawk.
Yeah, this now seems to be my thing. So anyone watching the video feed will see I sport I sport a colored mohawk where with each passing week of my life, there seems to be slightly less hair, which is the unavoidable trajectory of someone from a family with a hereditary history of male pattern baldness. But it now seems that my thing is apparently my head is space for sale. And I've been asked by a number of clients to dye it their corporate colors or theme it for their event. So yeah, I was papaya orange at the request of McLaren. Unrelated to the horrendous start to the season they've had. I like to think that that was purely coincidental. And next week it will be bright yellow for a company in New Zealand. So yeah, I've done purple for a client. I've done yellow. I've done orange. And I suspect it's going to be pink is its native state now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. And without giving too much away, because when this goes to air, you would have already done the conference, but you're telling me that you're rewriting a song, a very famous song, because you're also a rock star. Because I do want to read a little bit about your bio just for people's benefit. And part of it is you are a rock star. And one of the technological issues that since doing the first recording, both of us found out around Zoom is there's a little audio tab in the back end of Zoom that if you click it, it means that the audio comes through, but the video only stays on one person. And hence, we're recording this again.
Yeah, fantastic for jamming, not great for a podcast.
Yes. And it probably is a bit of a advertisement for other companies like Riverside, where they actually record on both sides and then they put it together, and so you get great sound. But hey, we're not going to do any jamming today, so we're just going to jam in terms of the voice.
Just like a knowledge jam, yeah?
That's it. Hopefully not too much BS. Because we're going to be talking about To Be Honest, and we've got to be honest and ethical. Can I just read a little bit about your bio, just for people's benefit? It's really interesting. So Sydney-based author, co-founder of Alchemy Labs, experienced senior executive, successful entrepreneur and international speaker with over 15 years of experience helping leaders do change in the face of disruption. You were the co-founder of an organization called Carrikins Group at 23, a behavioral change agency that you built to over 100 staff, delivering programs in more than 15 countries. Also the co-founder and director of tech business Educator Impact. You were a senior executive, spent 5 years as a partner at Ernst & Young. I was going to ask you, how'd you go with wearing a suit as one of the big principal sort of consultant organizations?
Without a hint of exaggeration. So I sold my company to EY. About 120 of us joined the organization, and they all, I mean, again, if you're on the video feed, Dom comes to you today in shorts and a t-shirt, which has been my corporate uniform for many years. And within about 3 days of the acquisition, EY had released a dress for your day policy where you were, it's like, it might be unrelated to our acquisition. I think it's because we started showing up at 200 George Street in jeans and t-shirts. But that's all right. They painfully got on board with it after a little while.
Well, they just need to get with the program. I mean, there's nothing worse than walking into a boardroom with stuffed suits. It's just be
Yeah.
yourself and be genuine and be honest. Be authentic.
Yeah,
Um,
I must say when because they at EY do I think an extraordinary job of the diversity and inclusion work, and I
mm.
genuinely mean that. I don't work for EY anymore. I have no relationship with them, and so it is my honest opinion they do an incredible job. But I think when they said we really want you to bring yourself to work, they hadn't fully appreciated what that meant for me, because I certainly took them at their word with that, and I'm not sure that they expected someone to rock up at the office with a pink mohawk. But I only had a few uncomfortable conversations about it.
Well, I was thinking, just imagining maybe some of the conversations around, well, could you actually dye that in the Ernst& Young corporate colours, maybe? Because they've got a couple
I
of corporate colours.
They do, although I'm not sure the brand team would love that, and I'd probably get the hex code wrong, which is like a mortal sin in that environment. So
Don't do
yeah,
that. Don't do
yeah,
that.
best to
And yeah,
not try.
absolutely. The other thing that's really interesting about your background is you've delivered presentations tens of thousands across the USA, Europe, and the Middle East, Australia, and New Zealand, and you are a former top 10 world debater.
I was, yeah. I got my seventh ranking in the world was the highest I ever got to. Although it's rolling back the years now a bit, but it was debating was a hugely important part of my upbringing and particularly my high school, my university years in particular. And I genuinely think, and particularly when it comes to sales, but I know there's a lot of listeners to this
Mm,
podcast that are outside of sales as well. But especially in sales audiences, I do think that the training that you get in debating, particularly around listening, people think of debating as an activity that's all about arguing and talking. It's really about listening.
yeah.
And in my experience, the most successful debaters in the world are actually just the people who listen incredibly closely and remember well what people have said. And I find that an incredibly transferable skill in sales and leadership more generally to genuinely and authentically listen closely to what people are saying with the intent to understand. In debating, you
Yes.
also tack on with the intent to then beat them, but outside of that context, simply with the intent to truly understand. It's a great activity.
And it'll be a great skill set also in negotiations, which a lot of salespeople would have to do because you really have to understand and listen to people's perspectives and the small things like voice inflections and stuff like that to say, well, is what they're actually telling me, do I have a feeling or a sensation that that is something that might be true, or is there something underneath that I need to sort of explore? So it's a great skill set to develop.
Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously the little things, it makes you much more confident on your feet, gets you really comfortable speaking extemporaneously. You don't feel like you need a lot of prep. At the World Championships, they only give you 15 minutes to prepare. So, the you hear these outlandishly crazy topics about all sorts of things, and you just got 15 minutes to figure it out and then get up and speak. In the case of the final, it was in front of I think maybe 1,000 people or so
Wow.
in the giant hall in Thailand, which is where I was at the World Championships. God, didn't think I'd be talking about debating today, but it's just the comfort that you get doing that over and over and over and over again to feel like, yeah, if I just really think about this, I will find things to say, and I will be able to just logic my way to a position here. Mm.
Yeah. And I mean, as you said, it's a great skill set that you can take into business, and particularly when you work with clients. We'll talk about, I guess, the proliferation of information that's now available and how
Mhm.
much of that is unintentional versus intentional disinformation or misinformation. But the
Mm.
person that can remember things, that can actually ask great questions, be genuinely curious and authentic with their responses over time should be able to get some good sustainability around their credibility.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that completely.
So the other thing I wanted to mention also is this book, to be honest, is literally hot off the press. I know you went before we were going to do this re-recording. You had to go and a bit of a trouble to pick up the physical copies because our friends at Star Trek were not going to deliver to Perth.
Yeah.
So we'll actually let people know where they can get a copy of this book as well at the end of the episode. Just talk a little bit about, because I wanted to read something at the back just about this information at the back. But before I do that, can you just tell a little bit about I guess, the makings of this book and what was happening? Was it a combination of a lot of your work? Was it something specific you said, you know what, I need to write a book about this particular topic? What was the catalyst? Because it's a great book and it's a phenomenal title, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that feedback. Yeah, and I should say, look, and I'm sure most authors feel like this. Um, I'm been extraordinarily privileged and lucky to do the work I've done over the course of my career, and I've built two great companies and been a senior exec and recorded an album and was a world top 10 debater and stuff. This book, I'm prouder of this book than of anything else I've worked on. I think it's genuinely important to be having this conversation right now. The book, in a single sentence, is about our increasingly fraught relationship with the truth as
Mm,
individuals, as businesses, as societies. And it's about why that's happening, why it's problematic, and how we fix it. And I did have a really distinctive moment of deciding to write this. I was writing a completely different book,
okay.
a book called Who Stole the Fun? And it
Hmm.
was about why so many companies are so crap to work for when they should be awesome, which was just something that's bugged me for years. And I was on holidays with my wife. Had just left EY, and we were just going on a bit of travel after many hard slogging years of building the companies and running them. And I was at a hotel bar, and it was in the middle of the US presidential election.
Yep.
And I don't even remember what the exact thing was that was happening. It was a different thing every day during the US election. And I just had this overwhelming sense of we are living in a world increasingly detached from fact and reality, where our relationship to the truth seems increasingly optional. And on a personal level, that was frustrating me. But based on all the work I'd done in organizations, I was like, we can't get the things we want out of business as
Mm,
business leaders, right? We can't be the best salesperson we can be. We can't be the best leader we can be. We can't be the best driver of innovation we can be if we don't have a healthy relationship to the truth. And the best salespeople, the best leaders, the best innovators that I know
yep.
have this relationship to the truth. And so I tore up the other book and over a few glasses of wine at the hotel bar wrote the first 2,000 words of this book, none of which made it into the final book because, as I just said, I was at a hotel bar, a few drinks in, and there was all sorts of crazy stuff in there. But the germ of this idea that we need to have this conversation, the way I've increasingly described it is the conversation about truth, getting that right is the thing that lets you have all the other conversations.
Yeah.
And unless we can have this shared departure point grounded in a shared understanding of what the truth is and why it's important and how we're connected to it, we're very unlikely to solve our most important problems individually or organizationally. And so that became the book. And then, it was 18 and a bit months of research and writing, working with some tremendous people. My business partner, who's a behavioral neuroscientist, played an instrumental role from a research perspective, working with great publishers to finally produce this thing that I'm incredibly proud of. And like I say, I genuinely think is important. Yeah.
I love that. And the thing is, you've got a number of, I guess, case studies, examples, stories, and you mentioned research. So you've spoken to F1 pit crews, you've spoken to people in corporate boardrooms, operating theaters, doctors, Bollywood actors.
Well, well, it might surprise you and your listeners to know that I am the Bollywood actor in that particular story. No exaggeration. There's a chapter in the book called The Biggest Lie I Ever Told. And it is about, unsurprisingly, the biggest lie I ever told. And that lie saw me in a Bollywood film studio dubbing Russian for a Bollywood film. I should let you know now, don't speak Russian. Um, but managed to fumble my way through, yes? Um, uh, and I'm not proud of it. But it was, an important story to tell. So yeah, there's even some big lies I've told in the book.
Well, and look, I want to get into some stuff and how it relates to what we do as leaders, and particularly for corporations, from an integrity point of view.
Mm.
What's really interesting, and I think we mentioned this on the first time we did this recording, which is never going to see the light of day. Um, on the back of the book, and I was fascinated when I read this. So, in the 2024 US presidential election, fact checking found that just 3% of Donald Trump's claims were true, and only 12% of his opposition, Kamala Harris, was true. In Australia, testing only found 4 out of 20 sunscreens that were advertised actually met the criteria for SP 50 plus. And what I got was fascinating because I wanted to ask you about AI in a second as well. In the UK, Builder.ai, a company that raised nearly $1 billion, collapsed after it emerged. This AI tool was really 800 engineers in India pretending to be AI. So let's talk about this, Dom, because there are obviously companies out there that don't set. Well, maybe I'm wrong, but I like to think the most majority of organizations do not set out to mislead, disinform, create lies, create a fictional narrative. They're probably doing it from the best of intentions. Where do you think all this comes from? How do you think we can get to a point where in a US presidential election, a very, 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 very small percentage of what was actually talked about was actually true?
Yeah, this is why I say I think that is one of the, if not perhaps you could make the case, the most important questions for us as individuals, as businesses, and societies to be grappling with right now. How did we get here? Because the point you made at the start of that question, which is your instinct and intuition that most people probably don't set out with the intention of like, I wake up this morning and I just want to be a liar. I agree with that. I don't think most people set out like that at all. But the evidence suggests that even though no one wants to be like that, the overwhelming majority of people have a pretty flexible relationship with the truth.
Mm,
And the more we get clear about what we mean by truth, the more apparent that becomes. To just kind of ground that. And I do want to honor the very specific question, which is like, why is that the case? I want
yeah.
to honor that with an answer in a second. But just to ground that, um, one of the most it's not controversial to say everyone thinks the truth is important when you ask them. Everyone says
Yeah.
that. In fact, and you would have read this in the book, like it's one of the most durable findings in social science across all the social sciences, across geographies, across time periods, across religious groups, across cultural groups. One of the most durable findings is that people think honesty matters. In fact, when you ask people what are the most important qualities in a person,
Mm,
almost always the number one most important quality people say is honesty.
yeah.
Almost always. And the lack of honesty is almost always in the top three bad qualities that people are like, that makes you a bad person.
Yeah.
More than 65% of corporate value statements have the word honesty or integrity in them, right? Two-thirds of companies are like, yep, we value honesty. However, at the same time as we are in a world where 8 billion out of 8 billion people tell us that honesty is important, almost everyone lies. Almost everyone lies every day. More than 60% of people lie more than once every 10 minutes.
More
Once
than
every
once
10
every
minutes.
10 minutes.
Everyone says honesty matters. Most people lie on the regular. um, and so there is a really clear. So your question that comes out of that, which is what the hell is going on there, is
Yes.
the question, right? And so I think we need to disabuse ourselves of a few notions, right? So almost no one lies because they're a psychopath, right? This idea of like, well, some people are just crazy. Yeah, somewhere between 1% and 3% of the population are, best estimates would suggest, psychopaths,
Yeah.
which is actually a pretty crazy high number. Like
Mm.
we've probably all met, worked with, worked for, married a psychopath. But but it's a small enough percentage that that does not explain lying. I think we have a flexible relationship for the truth. So there's a chapter of the book called Why We Lie, and
Mm.
there's a chapter long answer to that question. But I think you can boil it down to three things. Um, we lie, obviously. Oh, maybe lie is too strong a word in this case. We have a flexible relationship with the truth, generally for three reasons. So one is because it serves our interests, right?
Yes.
Shock horror, surprising no one. We lie because we get a benefit out of it, right? If it wins you an election, if it makes a sale, if it like those are the first class of situations where we lie.
Yeah.
Secondly, though, but interestingly, they're not even the most common situations. The second reason we lie is because sometimes it's easy.
Mm.
So, and we and crucially, we don't lie when it's easy. We literally lie because it's easy. So researchers have done experiments where they will put people in lab conditions, right? And they'll get them to play a game and they will change only, they keep the rules the same, they keep the rewards the same, they keep the structure of the game the same. All they change is how easy is it to get away with cheating.
Right.
And what they find is when you hold the reward constant, when you hold the rules constant, if you just make cheating a little bit easier, more people do it. So that
Really?
is, yeah, it's literally, and this is my business partner, Dr. Emily Heath, has a beautiful phrase for this. She's, as I said, behavioral neuroscientist. She says the thing you got to understand about behavior is that humans are ease-seeking missiles, right? Not
Ease. I love that.
ease-seeking missiles. Such a beautiful phrase. Um, and it's like, if you make something easier, we will do that thing, even when the rewards aren't high. And so sometimes we lie simply because it's easy to get away
Mm.
with in particular. If we think we're not going to be caught, happy days. Turns out we don't think honesty is that important if we don't think we're going to get caught. But then the third reason that we have a flexible relationship with the truth is social. You
Okay.
could refer to it as the social theory of lying. We fabricate the truth or we push the truth up because it builds relationships and identity amongst groups that we care about. So interestingly, if you look at conspiracy theorists, most people don't join a group with conspiracy theories because they believe the thing. They adopt the belief so they can join the group, right?
Yes.
So
Okay.
it's more we lie to fit in.
Yeah.
We lie to deepen our social bonds. We lie to protect the people with whom we've got social bonds. We're much more likely to tell a lie to protect our in-group than we are to, you know, protect some random out there. So it's a social thing. So we lie for benefit, we lie because it's easy, and we lie for social reasons. And then 1 to 3% of us lie because we're psycho. But really, you can boil it down to those kind of three things.
And without excuse me, without talking too much politics, you can now understand where you have different sides of politics who believe a certain thing and they will do everything to protect that belief, and they believe with all their being that that is the truth, and it may actually be factually incorrect.
100%. And it's the identity drives the belief, not the
Mm.
other way around. And so, yeah, to use that political example, for instance, Republicans are much more likely to believe that Democrats are liars and
Mm.
untrustworthy and are corrupt, and Democrats are much more likely to believe that Republicans are corrupt or whatever. And it's you get this weird thing, right, where it's like, why is it the case that someone's position on gun control could predict their position on climate change? These are
Mm.
unrelated social issues. There's no reason why, if you're pro gun, you're anti climate change.
Yeah.
And yet, those two things correlate nearly perfectly, right?
Wow.
And it's simply because that group holds those two beliefs. And so, to be in that club,
Yeah.
these are two things you got to believe.
You've got to have the same ideology. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. It kind of begs the question as you were talking. I just noticed on social media yesterday they were talking about with the Victorian, because basically I'm in Melbourne and we've got an election coming up at the end of this year, and they were starting to show some what is now known as the deep fake videos of
Mm.
politicians that are being produced, and you look at them and you think, wow, it looks like the person, sounds like the person, but the actual dialogue is completely different. It's probably like you doing the translation in Russian for the Bollywood movie, right?
Oh, God.
But it sounds like the person. So when you've got things like, and I want to ask you about this, when you've got things like AI and the technology that's now available, pretty much anybody with a computer and a keyboard and a little bit of knowledge around how to use these tools can create anything they want based on an ideology and put it out there as the truth. And it has
Mhm.
impact on others, and it can have an impact on the social fitting, the communities, and so forth. And they could take it on board as saying, well, it looks like that person, sounds like that person, so they must have said it.
Yeah.
Therefore, that's fact, but it's not. How do we grapple with
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I wish I had the simple answer to that question, but I mean, I think this is why this is the time for this convo, right? Because it used to be, and we're only going back a few years, it used to be, well, you can't believe everything you read, but at least you can believe everything you see. Or at
Yeah,
least you can believe everything you hear. And
yeah.
then we got Notebook LM and we got all these tools that let us create amazingly convincing audio. And I was like, well, we might not be able to believe everything we hear. At least we can believe everything we see. And now our like you basically have to live your life in constant skeptical vigilance now because you can simply never tell. I got sent so I'm a big Tottenham Hotspur fan.
Yeah.
Apologies in advance for between McLaren and Tottenham. I seem to basically back the losing horse everywhere this year. But I so for any football fans who are soccer football fans who are listening, they would know that Spurs are having their worst season since the 1930s, and they are going to get there's a good chance they're going to get relegated. And I got sent a clip from a friend of mine from the Minister of Finance in Sweden during question time, using an analogy about how the Minister of Finance in this was the shadow minister talking about how bad the Minister of Finance was, and they were using a they're so like Tottenham analogy. And he's an Arsenal fan. He sent it to me going, how crazy is it that Spurs are so bad that some politician in Sweden is using them as an example? And my first response was, this can't be real. Turns out it was real in this case, which is just tells you how bad that Tottenham ship has sunk. But that sense of every time you see something now, your first question has got to be, wait a second, is this real? Yeah, that's
Mm.
kind of where we are now. And if you want to be really disheartened, some studies have shown that even when you take people whose job it is to tell real from fake, so you take like police officers, right, who are meant to be able to tell when people are lying and when things are fake, even when you train them, their capacity to tell fake from real AI videos is something like 46, 47%, right? Basically, no better than chance. We're getting in a
Wow.
world where it's even hard to train people to tell the difference. And you know, on a story that'll blow listeners' minds about this, a little while ago, there was this banking executive in Hong Kong who was on a call with they were the regional financial controller in Hong Kong. They were on a Zoom call with their CEO based in New York and two other senior execs.
Mm.
And the senior execs authorized a $50 million transaction. Except it turns out after the transaction was made, the regional financial controller was not on a call with the senior execs. He was on a call with three AI deepfakes of
Whoa.
his CEO, his CFO, and some other director. Three deepfakes on a Zoom call convinced the financial controller to authorize a $50 million transaction. Um, like this is the darkest timeline, man. Like, what are we meant to do about that sort of stuff? And there are some answers to that question, but if there's anyone out there wondering, is this really a problem? The answer is yeah. Like, we are in an economy, and any salesperson will know this
Mm.
instinctively, right? Our economy runs on trust. That's what it
Yeah.
actually runs on. And we are at record low levels of trust, but that's just going to go down and down and down in a world where we don't have a shared understanding of what's real and what's true anymore. And that poses massive existential business risk. Um, when we're asking for people's trust in a sales process, in a business process, in a leadership process. So this part of this is a big, hairy, society-wide conversation, but it has real practical implications for doing
Mm.
business day to day.
I can imagine a salesperson and even customers, if a financial controller can be hoodwinked or influenced to think that they were actually talking to their executives to the point where they didn't even question that. I mean, what's the world going to come to? Particularly now as we do a lot more business in a virtual world over things like Zoom and Teams. Am I actually talking to the real Dom, or is this the avatar are you a robotic version of yourself?
Yeah.
And how do we actually prove one against the other? It's
Yeah.
staggering.
Well, weirdly, right, is one of the ways that some people are combating it. So this has come up a lot in we've been doing a lot of behavior change work recently in the anti-scam
Hmm.
space because, it used to be you get a call from a scammer and their accent tells you it's a scam and the weird noise goes, and now they can call you and perfectly impersonate your daughter's voice or your son's
Yeah.
voice or something. And so one of the pieces of advice that people are now being given is we need to go a little bit analog. Like families need a password
Yeah.
and it never gets written down and it never gets sent via email. And so when I get a call from quote unquote my daughter and she's in London saying, Mom, Dad, I need $10,000 or I'm going to get kidnapped, they can say, what's the password?
Password.
And she can tell us. And if they don't know it, then they're a
Off you go.
scammer. And businesses are going to have to start thinking the same way, which is part of the solution to this will be technology. We are
Yeah.
technologying our way into the problem. We need to technology our way out of it. Good governance, good regulation, and great protective tools. But we're losing that arms race, right? Like the scammers are more sophisticated more quickly than the defensive mechanisms. So part of it is technology, part of it is regulation, part of it is people learning some old school verification techniques that are like World War II code breaking stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating. In fact, as you were talking, I'm remembering I think it was a LinkedIn post about 2 or 3 weeks ago that I saw somebody post, and this was a like a chief revenue officer that had been pitched by 23 different people. They were all personalized messages via LinkedIn. They were all really well done. They were all done by AI, but the one that she engaged with was the person that picked up the phone and actually dialed her number and had a real life conversation.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
the other thing I noticed this morning is there was an article in one of the newspapers that talked about the Z generation now going away from digital and getting rid of, say, not so much getting rid of it, but slowing down the use of things like TikTok
Mm.
and going do some more tactile kinesthetic stuff like scrapbooking and vinyl record playing and building communities around that. So it's fascinating to see what's going to happen. Maybe people will stop using technology altogether and just go back to the face-to-face communication.
Yeah, and I think the other thing we're seeing with that, so I it's a bold person that makes predictions in anything to do with this stuff, but I find that prediction as a potential future scenario very intuitively appealing, partially because I want it, but I find it appealing, and it was interesting. I think it was John Haidt, might have been someone else who was talking about around the social media ban. Um, One of the interesting things is that and don't quote me on these exact figures. In fact, I won't use exact figures because I can't quite remember them. But the finding was a surprising number of young people who would have been covered by the social media ban were actually quite pro it because they were like, I know this isn't good for me, and I kind of want to get off, but I can't be the only one because all my friends are on it. And
Mm,
we kind of have to do this together
yeah,
if we're going to do it. And all of a sudden, the social media ban giving now that's not the universal opinion of every
of
Gen
course.
Zer out there, but I think there is a recognition that this trajectory we're going towards the full digitization, automation, and socialization of everything actually is bad for people.
Mm,
And you got to be a bit careful with that because, it wasn't that long ago that people were saying rock and roll's bad for everyone and the novel is bad for everyone. And like there is always this reactionary thing to new technology, and we need to be careful about that. And I was a big advocate for I've run tech and education programs. I used to advise companies on the adoption of social media. I was a real techno optimist for a while. But I think if we just follow the data, we're increasingly it's not wowserism scare stuff. There is
mm,
really good reason to believe that the way we're using and deploying technology is fundamentally bad for people. Gen Z is the loneliest generation in history. Um, and some striking stuff from Dr. Rafaela Ciriello at University of New South Wales from a lecture I went to last week. Gen Z, this will blow your mind. Gen Z are the first generation in history where their average IQ scores are lower than their parents. So there's
whoa.
this phenomenon called IQ drift. IQs tend to go up over time. It's IQ is an imperfect measure. Gen
Yeah.
Z, first time in history it's gone down. Also likely that Gen Z will be the first generation where life expectancy has gone down in the modern era, right? Like it's not just old people don't like change. there are really good empirical reasons to think that we need to get a little, that not all technological progress is good progress. And whilst it offers some amazing things, I love so much about AI. I use heaps of AI. It's incredibly powerful. It's great for so many things. That change in technology aren't automatically good. We have to be incredibly careful about the way we're using them. Otherwise, we get into this world where we're getting scammed left, right, and center, and half of the internet's full of crap. And like, that's a choice. That's a
Well,
choice.
it is. And I'm thinking about 12 months ago, I'd been on Telstra for forever, right?
Mm.
Since probably 2008, and moved our mobiles off to a different provider last year. Anyway, I got an email from Telstra to say when the cancellations happened 12 months ago, um, there were some things that happened, and you may be eligible for a rebate, right? A refund of, I don't know, 120 bucks, whatever it was. And I'm thinking, fantastic. And it had all these links in it. And I had a look at the email because I get a lot of scam emails, as you
Oh,
probably
yeah,
do as well. And I'm
for
thinking,
sure.
okay, it looks all legitimate, but I'm not quite sure. I checked all the things that I would normally check. But I thought, no, I'm going to go into the Telstra app and just see whether the number is the same, which it was. So I rang the number. I rang the number and I'm having a conversation with a person wherever she was located. And she said, the first thing she said is, it sounds like it might be a scam because there's nothing I can see on your account that indicates that might be a credit or a rebate delivered, right?
Interesting.
And I said, okay, cool. So she said, can you do me a favor? Take a screenshot of the email and send it through to me. I'll send you an email and send it back. And it was a legitimate email, right? And I had
Yep.
no inclination as to whether she was, and she was obviously at Telstra because she gave me an employee number and all that sort of stuff. So all that part of it's fine. So I sent it through to her while she's on the phone, and she got somebody else who is a deeper level of security to actually look at it. And she came back and said, "Oh, sorry, that actually is a legitimate email. It is
Mhm.
actually from us. And yes, you do have a credit that you can actually get. But isn't it interesting? I was going through that process, and the first thing I thought about is there's a number. It could be a phishing expedition, right? And I could
Big
be
time.
tapping on a link, and all of a sudden, all of my data has just gone into Pakistan or whatever the case might be.
100, yeah, some scam factory in Myanmar or somewhere, and that's not an exaggeration. People like it's incredibly important that everyone kind of grapples with this, right? Which is scammers are not crazy like the archetypal nerds in their parents' basement doing stuff. That scamming now is a professional industry. They are
Yes.
state sponsored. They are most of the people on the other end of the calls are in, broadly speaking, modern slavery. They have had their passports taken from them. They are working in scam factories. The incredibly and the proceeds of scamming is not going to line the pockets of some businessmen. They're state sponsored. It is funding the international arms trade. It is funding international geopolitical subterfuge. It's funding
Mm,
sex trafficking. This is not wowserism. This is not um, crazy claims. This is very evidence based stuff. Sulin Wong, who's a journalist for The Economist, released a podcast called Scam Inc. Everyone should listen to it. The enemy is organized with this
mm,
stuff. And that response you've had there is unfortunately a response we have to have now.
yeah.
Um, and one of the things that we talk to companies a lot about, and so I've done a lot of work with consumer affairs professionals and customer service representatives, those sorts of functions, is for years companies have been teaching customers how to behave, right?
Yeah.
We've been teaching customers things like if you call us, you will wait on hold for 20 minutes, that you will get emails from us at sort of all hours of the day that ask you for personal information.
Mm,
Like we've been teaching people a certain way to engage with, and now that thing that Telstra asks you to do, it's because the best advice is if you're unsure, call the company.
yeah.
That's fine. But if I expect to be on hold for 30 minutes, I'm not going to call the company. So we have to start undoing all these things that companies have taught people to expect to get them to do the behavior that's protective.
Yeah.
Yeah, so everyone's got a role to play in that, but that is certainly just where we are.
Nuts, nuts. So, Dom, how do we change this?
Mm.
Let's talk about solutions because I know in the book you got two parts. The first part is all about the why in terms of why the truth matters and some of the things and what lies are and why we lie. We've talked about it a little bit. And part two is also making truth happen. So being a truthful leader, you talk about chapter eight, the biggest lie you've ever told, and that's the Bollywood story. Um, but for leaders listening to this, and they might be in
Mm.
it, they may be in a sales leadership role, they may not be in a sales leadership role, but thinking, okay, I want to be able to create a psychologically safe environment. I want to create an ecosystem where truth and integrity is not just something that we put up on a whiteboard or on a flip chart or even on a wall, but it's something we live. What are some solutions to this that we can start to think about and implement?
Yeah. Sorry, the classic Australian thing. If I'm going to start my answer with yeah. The yeah, no, no, yeah.
Well, yeah, if you're a
S-
sporting person, yeah, yeah, nah.
Yeah. Yeah, nah. Um, so I would suggest that there are three very specific behaviors that help make truth happen. And there are three very specific qualities,
Hmm.
kind of human qualities that support those behaviors. Um, and so to sort of share those in headline form, I think the three behaviors that leaders in particular need to commit to are seeking the truth, speaking the truth, and hearing the truth. So by seeking the truth, I simply mean maybe I pair them up with the qualities. Seeking the truth is really about the behavior of curiosity.
Hmm.
So when we hear a thing, we tend to leap to judgmentalism very, very quickly. So we'll hear, and this could be anything, right? Someone might tell us something at work, or someone might make a claim, or someone might suggest something. And we tend to leap to judgmentalism very quickly and
Yeah,
either go, yeah, that's generally if we agree with it, we'll go, yeah, that's right, that's true. I mean, count me in, dial me in. Or generally, if we don't agree with it, we'll go, nah, that's bollocks, or nah, that's what. And so we leap straight from hearing to concluding.
yeah.
Seeking the truth is about understanding that there should be a gap between seeking the truth should be about understanding that there should be a gap between receiving something and formulating any type of judgment about that
Mm,
thing, and to have curiosity as the first response. And so the
yeah.
question I think we should leap to simply is we should learn to reflexively ask, I wonder if that's true.
Mm,
Or is that true? Or if it's of a person, hey, what makes you think that that's true?
yeah.
And to do it out of genuine curiosity. And I think by having that curiosity and skepticism, healthy skepticism is kind of important there. Having that
Mm,
degree of curiosity, the quality of curiosity, curiousness, can really help with seeking the truth. There's a long conversation that could be had about that, but we can maybe leave that there. So the
yeah,
second one is then speaking the truth. And
yeah.
you reference psychological safety. I think safety is the quality we need to cultivate if we want people to speak the truth. Everyone says we want people to be honest. I want my team to speak up. I want people to tell me what's what. Um, Data from flight, like black box cockpit recorders, shows a pretty frightening pattern, right? Which is in a lot of air disasters, the co pilot knows that something is going wrong, but they don't speak up and tell the captain, right? They,
Oh,
they call it safety voice, is the thing in flight safety. Right? And there's fascinating research around this, but they'll do all these things that aren't, Captain, we have a problem, right? They'll do all these, and simply they won't speak up because they don't feel safe to do that in the cockpit. Put another way, people would rather fly into a mountain than speak up, right? That's how scary it can be to speak up. So all of us leaders walk around going, I really want my team to speak up, not realizing that that's freaking scary, man, for people to do.
wow.
So if we want to speak the truth for us as individuals, that's about courage, right? That's about going, I know that this is going to feel a little bit scary. This might cost me something, but I'm going to speak up and tell the truth. For leaders, that's about making it as unscary as possible.
Mm.
Right. So how can we create an environment where telling the truth doesn't have to be feel like it's crashing into a mountain? Like it's where it's less scary.
And
Makes
maybe
you
that's, oh, just that's nuts. Just think about it. They'd rather die than tell the truth for fear of whatever judgment,
yeah.
ridicule, not being part of the group.
Yep.
Oh man. And from a leader's point of view, you've got to have the courage, and often that would be in order to get my team to speak the truth, I have to lead by speaking the truth, which means I might have to start with a vulnerable story or a thing that I completely stuffed up and say, hey, and give permission to say, you know what? I'm one of the most flawed individuals on the planet, and guess what? I'm still here. I'm still going to serve. I'm still going to get a result, but it's all good. So you give permission.
Mate, that is the middle of the bullseye. Like, if you want a behavior as a leader, that is the most powerful thing you can do to start creating a healthy relationship with the truth. Go first
Mm.
with a truth about yourself. So we talk about these three types of truth. Them truth, that's all the truths we tell about everyone else. Like, oh, Trump's a liar, Harris is a liar, Albanese's a liar. Like our competitors are liars, like them truth. Then there's
Yeah.
we truth, the stuff we're willing to say about our in-group. So
Yeah.
this might be a company doing a culture review and going, man, I think we've got a problem with leadership. Like our people aren't very engaged. We need to do something about that. So like a we truth. But the third type of truth, me truth, I have made a mistake. I am imperfect. I sometimes the most honest statement, speaking the truth, the most true thing someone can say is, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like that's often the most true thing. A lot of leaders just aren't willing to do that.
Yeah.
They themselves are a bit scared of, wait a minute, I'm in leadership. Aren't I meant to have all the answers? Or, the and so yeah, as you say, if you really want to speak the truth, start speaking it with a me truth about myself.
Mm.
I share an example in the book. My business partner at Carrikins, which you referenced, with the first company I built and sold. Um, this guy Pete, phenomenal leader, one of the best CEOs and entrepreneurial minds I've ever met. We did a round of 360-degree feedback. He got the worst feedback I have
Wow.
ever seen a leader receive. He let me publish it in the book, so you can read his actual feedback graph. That we used a tool called Li, and they benchmark your feedback against about 41,000 leaders. He was in the top 1% for three different negative behaviors amongst 41,000 leaders. And so, talk about a me truth, right? He's just received this incredible feedback.
Mm.
Most people in that situation would do one of two things. They would either go, these people don't know what they're talking about, and just reject the feedback, or
Yes.
they bury that shit in a drawer. They're like, put that in the bottom drawer and never let it see the light of day. Pete, not so much. The chapter this is in is called the greatest act of leadership I've seen. Because what Pete's response was, I am going to call an all of company meeting and I'm going to fly people to Sydney from all around the world, had like 100 and something staff. And we're going to sit in a room and I'm going to put my feedback unedited on a slide. And he was like, I've just received this feedback. Turns out I've been having a terrible impact on you all. I'm so sorry. I'd like to receive some specific feedback now. And we sat in a room for an hour
Yeah.
and people just went at it and were just like, here's the thing you did, here's what the and I have never seen a single act of truth telling
Mm.
build more trust and create more safety in the room. You can't watch your CEO do that and come away going, well, I guess it's not safe to speak up around here. Like do
That's
you know what I
right.
mean? The most senior person has just made it so clear. And so, yeah, I know that's a long answer, but to your point, like, yeah, man, that's the thing. Leaders going first.
And that sets such a phenomenal example. And if there was anybody in the company having even the slightest question mark over whether this is the right organization for me, that would have been answered in that moment, in that hour.
100%. And they still remember it. I went back. So this was 15 years ago that happened. I
Yeah.
went back and interviewed something like 10 people for my book who were there on that day, right? None of these people work for me anymore. They're all
Yeah.
of and crazy roles, right? Like one of them's now the global chief operating officer for BCG. Like all these incredible roles. I went back and they were like super junior burgers at that time. And I went
Yeah.
back and interviewed them. And one person said, who had given incredibly negative feedback. So they walked into that room having nothing but bad things to say and think about Pete. And
Yeah.
their quote that's in the book was, in that moment, Pete went from a terrible leader in my eyes to my model for what good leadership looks like.
Wow.
In in one moment. No one had forgotten it. Everyone remembered where they were sitting in the room and what they said on the date. Like, to be honest, it like going first feels pretty scary, and that's a big step for someone to take. And I don't want to undersell it. Pete was in front of a room of 100 people in tears
Mm.
hearing this feedback. It was a pretty incredible moment. Um, but if you're in a leadership position, leaning into that and going first can transform an organization's relationship to telling the truth.
Just before you talk about the third behavior,
Mm.
how did it impact Pete? How did it transform him? Because that took a huge amount of gumption to do that. And you mentioned before he was sitting in the front of 100 people in tears. How did it transform him from that day? Do you think it helped and made him an even better leader, and his reputation just went through the roof?
Yeah, it did, and we measured it. The uh I'm obsessive about data, and so I'm like, show me the stats, or it didn't happen. And so I actually include in the book the feedback from Pete that was shared on that day, and then 12 months later, the
Yeah,
feedback he got. Like it's far from perfect. There is no such thing as that one intervention that solves every problem. But to summarize it really quickly, in his first measurement, um, I believe of the 12 measured behaviors, I think the six highest measurements were all the negative ones.
hmm
In the new measurement, his top three most dominant measurements were all the good ones. And so it really, so there was still lots of, he's an imperfect person on a journey of change and stuff, but it truly it was the catalyst that set him off on an incredible leadership journey that he invested in, right? And so did
yeah,
we. Like, my feedback was far from perfect at that time as well. No one's feedback is ever perfect. And
yeah,
so like, I wouldn't want to undersell, you need to invest in the right coaching. That's incredibly important to have the right coaches on board for this stuff, the right coaching, the right measurement, and then a team around you that wants to go on that journey as well.
yeah.
But yeah, it was a catalyst moment of change. Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant. Love it, love it. So we've got seeking the truth, speaking the truth, and the third one.
Is hearing it. And that really is, I guess, that Pete
Mm,
example, is uh when people hear uncomfortable truths, especially say in the form of feedback, we almost always go through the same process together, right? So the
yeah,
first thing is we reject it.
yeah.
Uh,
Unless it's positive.
and yeah, oh no, yeah. If it's positive, these people are
Just
geniuses.
tell me a
Yeah,
bit more, please, Tom.
yeah. Could you go deeper on that thing you said? Yeah. Um, it's like when people do the feedback sandwich, but they never get past the first
That's
point. You know,
right.
uh, yeah, it's just a feedback crumpet of positivity. Um, the so we almost always go. So the first thing, almost all listeners, I'm sure, especially if you're in a sales role, this will be familiar territory. But um, uh, this phenomenon of cognitive dissonance, right?
Mm,
When we hear information that conflicts with our view of the world, our first tendency is not to change our mind; it is to reject the information. That is the inbuilt thing, and there are very deep evolutionary reasons for that, right? We tend to filter out lots of stuff. We want to
mm,
protect and preserve our view of the world, and so we're slow. We're quick to change our minds about superficial things. We're generally very slow to change our minds about more core beliefs.
yeah.
Generally, can do, but generally. And so that cognitive, and so when someone gives you a bunch of feedback, the first, or when you simply hear uncomfortable truths, the first step is where we tend to reject it. Um, you want to know a crazy stat? The IGPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, right? So they're the world's leading body that collects data on climate change. They did a study that showed if you take climate change data and present it to someone who doesn't believe in climate change, right? This is the best facts that we have to go. And you present that to a climate change denier, the
Yeah.
most likely effect will be to deepen their belief that climate change isn't real. The most likely thing we are to do when we're presented with conflicting information is go, that is so wrong. I'm digging in
Digging down.
to, yeah, yeah, has to be true. And then the second thing we do, so we go through that. It's like the 7 stages of grief. We go through denial.
Yeah.
Um, the second thing we're likely to do is shoot the messenger, right? So in an enterprise environment, this is like if someone gives you feedback, you go, yeah, but they don't know what they're talking about,
Mm.
or they don't get the context, or of course they'd say that they're an idiot. This
Mm.
is, yeah, I'd expect you to say that, like that sort of thing. And I'm hamming it up there, but that's what we tend to do, right?
Yeah.
Or if you've ever done 360-degree feedback in a company, the way a lot of leaders do it is they know they're not meant to shoot the messenger, so they shoot the instrument.
Mm.
They go, oh yeah, but the survey we use to collect the data probably isn't very good. So they're like just clasping at whatever they can. Um uh this is like the when the Secretary of Labor Statistics presented Donald Trump with bad jobs figures, his response was to fire the Secretary of Labor, the Department of Labor Statistics. It's like, cool. Then the third thing we do is we get really sad and angry,
Yeah.
right? So we kind of listen to it, but we don't grapple with it. We go through almost that grieving process, which is totally understandable. And then hopefully we finally get to acceptance,
Mm.
or at least grappling
Yeah.
with the thing. Um, and I would say, and so that fourth thing, like that's the real hearing the truth. But those first three, I'd call that's dismissing the truth. That fourth bit of grappling with it, that's hearing the truth. And I think the quality that we need to do that is humility,
Yes.
right? To approach just because truth exists doesn't mean you're in possession of it.
Yeah.
So there is an objective truth out there. Climate change is either real or it isn't. Like there is an objective. Vaccines cause autism or they don't, right? And they don't, by the way. But like there is an answer to that question. But knowing there's an answer doesn't mean that you've got the right one. And
Mm.
humility is being willing to go, I'm not going to simply presume that my current view of the world is the right view. And I'm going to have the humility, both intellectual and personal, to approach this conversation from a position of I am open to the fact that I could be wrong, or that I
Yeah.
need to change my mind, or that there is something here that there's some people seem to think the stronger my opinion, the more likely that makes it to be true. They're unrelated. Those are
Totally.
different axes on a graph.
Totally.
You can't believe your way to the truth,
No.
right? And so this is the humility to go, actually, it doesn't matter how passionately I believe this thing. The truth is out there. And unless I can humbly approach this conversation, then I'm very unlikely to make truth happen. So if we can seek it out through curiosity, if we can speak it through both safety and courage, and if we can hear it with a sense of humility, those are the cultures where truth happens, and those are the leaders that make truth happen.
And as you were talking that last little bit, I'm thinking if I can hear the truth with a level of humility without judgment, and ask the question, is there fact or evidence to build this, or is this just something I've got as a belief? Then there's a loop that goes back to the point where you're now seeking the truth because you're now going to have a healthy level of skepticism. You're going to ask some better questions and
Absolutely.
maybe consider some data that you haven't considered that has actually formed your version of the truth in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. A great way um there's a tool for that, right? Because that's such a beautiful articulation. It is a circle, right?
Mm,
And the tool that I think most of the tools for this, I think, are just really good questions.
yeah,
Um, and a great question for people to ask themselves is, in any given situation, what would it take to change my mind?
yeah,
Um, because the answer should, and I think it should always be the case, although I'm really open to the idea that I haven't thought the always bit fully through here, and maybe eating some of my own dog food, I think all it would take is a good argument to change my mind here. But I think at this point I'd be comfortable to say always it's the case that the answer to the question, what would it take to change my mind, should simply be good evidence and good argument.
yeah,
And if I've arrived at my position because my best and most good faith reading of the world around us is this is what I think the truth is, that's a great reason to hold a position. Um, But if it is now an answer like, well, nothing would change my mind, everyone has the right to that opinion. No one
Yeah.
can force you into another position. But my argument would be, if your interest is in seeking, speaking, and hearing the truth, then being willing to change your mind in the presence of a good argument or good evidence is really all it should ever take.
Well, and going back to the example you shared with Peter, he was in that position where he could have stood back and, as you said, reject it and say, put it in the drawer or whatever. But he said, you know what? Is there evidence here? And obviously, the evidence is there's lots of this feedback. I've got to consider it. I've got to ask questions. I've got to actually listen, not justify it, not defend it, but listen, because it may well be some information that is the truth that other people are sharing that I haven't taken on board or I haven't wanted to take on board.
Yeah, precisely. And it's like, I think a lot of people are under the impression that, oh man, if you're like, what makes you think you know the truth? They'll say like, it feels a bit arrogant to think that you're seeking the truth. And it's like, no, you got this backwards. It's not that I'm so it's so important to me to be right that I'm never going to change my mind. It's that it's so important to me to be right that I'll change my mind all the time.
Yes.
Like that I don't this is the distinction is I don't want to win. I want to be right. It's really important to me that I find positions that are in alignment with the facts, not
Yeah.
for any philosophical reason, but because the facts exist. So if
Mm.
you like a sales process is like constrained by facts, right? We have a product that's right for the customer, or we don't. We
Yep.
have a solution that works, or we don't. And those things are facts, right? And so we can't believe our way out of them as we can't believe our way out of those things. And so it should be in our interest to want to try to understand what the true facts of the matter are. And if our products
Totally.
don't work, that's an innovation and a product development question. And if they do work,
Totally.
that's awesome. And I think we said last time, like the hardest thing really, in my view, about sales isn't selling stuff, it's selling stuff twice. Because like you can spin people a yarn in a first conversation, but second time around, it either worked or it didn't.
It did. Absolutely. And I mean, I'm conscious of the time. We'll wrap this up in a second, but in a sales context, if your solution doesn't fit the requirements that the customer has, the truth thing and the integrity based thing to do is to say, you know what, Dom, there's not a match here. I don't think we can
Mm.
help you, and here's why. Here's the suggestion I'm going to make, because that is investing in the truth, and that's potentially going to come back and benefit you down the track.
Yeah. I mean, I often get asked what's the fastest way to build trust. Um, that's the fastest way to build
Yeah.
trust. Acting outside of your own immediate interest.
Yep.
There's a lot of ways people try to cheat with trust, and they think
Yeah.
it's about like, you know, touching the elbow at the right time and body matching and mirroring and connect and lead and all this stuff that we kind of like we all bristle a little bit at. The fastest way to build trust is act in someone else's interest when it's not directly in your own.
Yeah.
And man, that client or the non-client who you say I don't have the right thing for you will trust you so much when you come back 12 months later and say I actually do now because you're the guy that pointed them in the right direction. They've got a
Totally.
reason to trust you.
Yes, and in some cases, not all, but in some cases, they may actually start to think about, no, no, I think it is the best solution. Here's why. So they
Yeah,
start to, and you've got to say,
yeah,
no, 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 we're not going to do business.
yeah.
But
Stop trying to buy from me. Yeah.
exactly, we don't want to sell you stuff. Hey Dom, this has been a another ripping conversation. Thank you so much. I want to get people to get access to this book, and I'm holding it
Yep.
up now. To be honest, where is the best place for them? First of all, to get the book, but also to connect with you and understand more about what you do and read all the stuff that you write about and talk about.
Yeah, beautiful. So, domthurbon.com is your one-stop shop for all my stuff. I often get asked after presentations, where can we hear more from you? So there's a part of my website called More from Dom, where hint is in the title, where you can subscribe, and it's a newsletter slash pod content thing. It's semi-regular, semi-structured content that I think will be valuable for people. And then the book's available at all good bookstores. There's a link to it on domthurbon.com. Buy it from Amazon if you want to give your money to Jeff Bezos, or Dimmicks if you want to keep it in the country. That's the I leave it up to you to decide.
Love it. Because this is a free enterprise country. You can make your own
Absolutely.
choices. And
Exactly.
also, if it's okay with you, I'll put your LinkedIn handle as well so people can connect with you
Great.
on LinkedIn as well, mate.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Definitely.
hey, thank you so much. It's been another phenomenal conversation. One last question as we wrap. Is there one last piece of guidance, advice, something that's like a favorite element for the book that you'd like to leave people with that perhaps we haven't touched on today?
Look, it's probably just where we finished the conversation. For me, the I can't remember who said it exactly, but I once heard someone say of the humility stuff that the reason humility is the single most important quality in leaders is because where there is ego, there is excess, and it really stuck with me and stayed with me, that particular phrase. I think of all the qualities that could de-escalate the tension around truth, that could maybe create a space where we don't have to yell at each other, we can speak with each other,
Yeah,
to open the door to that me truth conversation, that maybe I'm the one that needs to have a conversation about my impact. I think humility for me is at the top of the tree. um and so if there was one piece of advice, it would be that cultivating intellectual, professional, and social humility, I think, is deeply underrated and can be a tremendously powerful tool to achieve the outcomes that we want. And if people take only one thing from the book, it's, well, if there's two things from the book, it's one, don't be full of crap, and two, humility can really help.
love it. And to paraphrase all that, humility can become a superpower, particularly for leaders.
I love that.
Love it.
Absolutely.
Mate, absolute pleasure. Once again, I think I've said about 45 times. Love your work. Thank you so much for agreeing to come back for a second time, even though people will be listening to this for the first time. And all the very best to you, mate, on your continual journey, and may all the blessings come your way.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Darren.
Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com, and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.